So it is August 20th. I got a lot of smoke and haze in the air from some wildfires. Apple season is not really upon us yet. They still have a long time to go, but this is one of my more productive trees. And I need to thin some of these out, and I've really been slacking on that. Because what happens is you get too many apples too close together, and it's either hard on the branches, or it makes it so that certain apples are not going to mature. So, like, look at this little guy right here. This guy just needs to come right off, and I'm going to put it in the bag. So, my strategy is to kind of take the smallest, weakest ones from any particular area and thin those out so that the bigger, healthier apples have a chance to thrive. And some of these are, like this whole bunch is just not even growing, so take these guys off. And as you can see, these branches are bending down. I had to string this tree up a couple of years ago because it was just bending over, so I need to do a little bit of pruning. But we still have about a month to go before we have to harvest these things. So right now I'm just going to keep thinning. So like this guy here, he could go out with you. Now just because you're pulling these apples off does not mean that you need to throw them away. There are lots of uses for them. You can even eat them as apples, though they're going to be a little bit tart. Anyway, so I'm going to keep thinning. This little guy doesn't need to be here. In fact, that one's a little bit looks fungusy or something. So now this tree is a parkland, and they are very abundant every other year. Like this one over here, this is a harcourt, and they put out kind of a different looking apple. They're more like this elongated shape. A little bit bigger, but not quite as abundant, but still a very healthy tree. This one here is a September ruby. This is actually the first year that it's going to put out any apples for me. I planted it 5 years ago. They're looking pretty good. They're just not very abundant. I really like the look of that one. And I really like the look of that one. Over here, we have another harcourt. This one's got some really attractive looking red apples coming up. Again, they have about one more month to mature. And some of them will probably be picked well before then. We've had a very dry summer, so I think I probably should have watered them a little bit more. In the orchard, we have this little scarecrow deal up. It seems to help. I'm also trying to grow this bur oak. It doesn't seem to really get any bigger year after year, but there we've got some of our apple trees. And there's one farther back there. So I've only got 4 trees in this little mini orchard, but I have several mini orchards, and that's because if a moose gets into one, I don't want to lose all my apple trees. So something that I do is we kind of tie up like old pieces of cloth, things that'll flap in the breeze and make it obvious that, hey, there's a fence here. And that's so that moose, if they're running away from something, don't just run straight through the fence. And I'll show you a fence where that has happened, because it does happen. So here is a fence that somebody had put across this old trail that's not used anymore. And here you can see this T-post is completely bent over. The fence is all wrinkled. And you've got moose hair all over the place because a moose just literally ran down this trail, did not see the fence, and completely took it out. So here we have a Norland. Normally this will put out some apples, but it got severely pruned by a moose this past winter. Now you can see our fence has the little dangly things like I was talking about. But over in that section over there, what happened is the snow had drifted up so high that the moose were able to just step over the fence. And you can see we have, 6-foot tall fences, and usually that should be enough. But the moose ended up pruning that Norland there, a little bit of this Goodland tree, and they heavily pruned this Parkland right there. And this one is rebounding beautifully, and it even has apples on it this year, which is nice. Not too many, but take what I can get. I have a few others back there. There's a believe that's another September Ruby, and farther back is a Nor Kent. In the back corner back there is a Honeycrisp. Here are a couple of Lodi apple trees, that's spelled L-O-D-I. I planted those 5 years ago, and they haven't done anything for me ever. So maybe it's just the way they were grown initially. But unlike these other super adapted to cold climate trees, these Lodis, they've just never even flowered. But take a look at this one. This is a Goodland. You can see that some of these are basically like ready to harvest already, and it's only, what, August 20th, and I think I might even pick a few of those today and give some of the up-and-comers chances to mature. So Goodland is a very, very nice kind of apple for our climate. So I'll go ahead and pick some of those right now. Let's find a good one. I'll go with this guy here in the middle. And you know, it's not super big, but it looks like it's going to be delicious. Here's another Goodland tree. It's got a fair number of apples on it. Again, these trees are all quite young still. If you see some unhealthy looking leaves, you want to pick them. A lot of times you'll want to take them away from the tree site, just in case it's a fungus or something that can spread. So while you might want to prune apples, you also want to prune leaves. Any leaves that are not really helping the tree do its job. Over here we've got another Norland. Only a couple of ones up in that guy. And the rest in this mini orchard are September Ruby, which are all putting out a few, not too many, but a few really nice looking apples. Now this isn't an apple tree, this is a plum that I tried to plant. But I wanted to use this as an example of what you have as, these are suckers. These are the roots trying to grow out new trees below the point where the tree was grafted. And typically, you want to get rid of those and cut them off. For these, I'm not going to bother because this tree is already dead. Plums do not do well in this area, I have learned. But for apple trees, you definitely want to get rid of your suckers if you have them. As I was filming those root suckers, I heard a thunk, and a nearby Goodland tree had just dropped this apple, probably because it was ready. So, taste test time. Well, it is juicy and delicious. Still a little tart. It's not mealy at all. It's a very good apple. So, just because an apple isn't ready yet doesn't mean you can't use it. So, when we get these thinned out ones, we usually kind of cut it up. And it's, you know, it's got good apple flesh. And we just kind of cut it up, and maybe we'll add it to our oatmeal in the morning as we're cooking it. Let it kind of simmer in there with the oats and with some, you know, brown sugar, cinnamon, all that good stuff. And then you take the little core, you can toss that out. These little bits you can just cut up and, yeah, cook them with your oats. They still have all the fiber and vitamin C and all that good stuff. So there's no need to let this go to waste. Something I wanted to point out in this video is tree spacing. You'll notice that there's an apple tree, and there's an apple tree, and there's an apple tree, and they are, you know, a good 12 feet apart or so, and you want to make sure they're far enough apart that once they grow, because they're going to get even bigger, that they're not going to grow into each other. So this is a September Ruby tree. These are supposed to be a 9 on the scale of 1 to 10 according to the Alaska Pioneer Fruit Growers Association, and they are a beautiful apple. It is kind of like yellow-green with red on it. So that's a September Ruby. Selfie can here. So it's the middle of September and it's harvest time. So we're picking apples off of this tree here. We've got some nice ones. I shouldn't have to tell you how to pick apples, but it's kind of like a twist and pull type of thing. Voila. So these are the main 4 types we were picking. There's a couple others that I didn't get, but this one on the left is Goodland. It's kind of green with a yellow, green with a red blush. This one is a Harcourt. It looks kind of like a Red Delicious, but it's got some not quite as heavy red coloration. This is a Parkland over here. These ones are redder and rounder. Our Parklands are still kind of small, but they're very, very sweet, crisp, juicy, all that good stuff. This is a September Ruby. Beautiful apple. And we had some Norlands as well, but these are the main ones that we picked. And we have just quite a bunch. I mean, just bags. These are all September Rubies, and these are kind of all mixed, depending. We have also given a lot away to friends and neighbors and things. So, that's it for this season. So taste test time, September Ruby. Delicious. It's got very, it's all white under there. Sweet, not too sweet. I'd say it's slightly more on the tart side. Very juicy. So that's a smaller Goodland. How does it taste?
It tastes it is juicy, but a tartar juice, but quite tart. Apple.
Does it taste good?
Parklands are a very round apple, usually quite red, and juicy and quite sweet. I personally think they are best eaten raw and fresh.
I've already had so many apples this morning that I don't want to have a very big Harcourt, but the Harcourt taste test is good. It's a very, I'd call it a very middle of the road apple. Definitely on the sweeter side. Had that lovely crunch. Nice and juicy. All around great apple. I know it doesn't have a rating according to the Alaska Pioneer Fruit Growers Association. I'd give it at least a 7. I'd say 7 to 8 personally, based on just a fresh taste test. 2 apples at once? And a third?
It is worth the wait.
Cooking apples for apple butter.